The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
Hi, I'm Jason Bryant from the Short-Time Wrestling Podcast and founder of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. Shows on the network are individually owned and operated, and those opinions presented and expressed may not reflect others, the sponsors, patrons, or the parent network. Find more shows about the greatest sport in the world at the Matt Talk Podcast Network at matttalkonline.com.
It's time for Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling. We'll talk all things Hokie wrestling with Coach Tony Robie and staff. Now, let's join your host, Hall of Fame wrestling writer and broadcaster, Jason Bryant.
Episode 100 of Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling. Fittingly, we start episode 100 with a note that this is the 100th year of Hokie wrestling. On the show today, celebrating the 100 and 100 is the head coach who will be with us at least through a couple more years into those 100s, head coach Tony Robie. Coach Robie, been a while since you've been on the show, been a while since we've had any real news to talk about. How you been, and what's Blacksburg like this time of year?
Well, I'm doing great, all things considered and based on what's going on, but really good. Things are well. Blacksburg is obviously changed a little bit in terms of just the feel and the energy around campus. We recently went to online classes. So we're on Thanksgiving break right now. After Thanksgiving break, everything is going to be online. There was a lot of stuff that was online prior to that too, but there were some classes that they were holding on campus, and they're going to go all online, and we'll see how many students come back and move back to Blacksburg. But obviously, kids that are in the dorms will be at home learning remotely and going to class remotely, other than athletes and international students and kids that are required to be there. So it's certainly a much different feel than it was 12 months ago, but we're adjusting and making the most of it and trying to stay positive about the whole situation.
What's it like walking around campus when you do go in and you sit there and that Friday nights before football games and then Saturday tailgating and stuff? It was a real an atmosphere. And what's it like to walk around campus knowing that, okay, that's definitely diminished? Yeah,
it's obviously very different. Like I said, the biggest thing is just the energy level, and it's certainly different. A lot easier to find a parking spot, that's for sure. It's a lot like it would be when there's a break or when we're in summer class and there's not the same amount of students on campus in town. Certainly not walking around campus. So. All in all, I think Virginia Tech students did a pretty good job of with complying with the mask mandates and the social distancing mandates, and so I think we've done our end of the bargain here and held things up, and hopefully we're in a place where at some point we can get back to some normalcy, but I think nobody really knows when that's going to be, and we're all excited for that. But we've adjusted, and I think the town and the campus and the students and the athletes have adjusted as well, and just kind of trying to make the best of it and the most of it, and waiting for that opportunity when things do get back to normal, and they will get back to normal. So we're looking forward to that day.
Hokie Nation has gotten their state of normalcy has been winning when it comes to the wrestling program. You've recently signed a contract extension through 2025 back in September. That was the last real bit of Hokie-related wrestling news before we get to the freestyle side of things of the Southeast RTC. But what's it like to know that the administration loves what you're doing and you're in Blacksburg at least through 2025?
It feels great. Especially during these times, right? When there's a lot of people that aren't as fortunate to have the kind of security that I have. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful to Whit Babcock and our administration to know that, they feel good about the direction of the program and where we're at. And this is obviously where I want to be. I've been here for 14 years and my children have been here for the majority of their lives, and, my wife, and it's a place that we love. And we didn't plan on leaving, so when that opportunity presented itself and we started talking about a contract extension and doing some negotiating, one of the biggest things for me was just to get as many years as I could get on the end of it, and was pleased to be able to get it extended as long as I got it, and excited to know that I'm going to be here and continue to build this thing with the people that we have involved in the program and the staff, and couldn't be happier about, who we have involved with our program, with our training center, from a coaching standpoint, from an athlete standpoint, from an administrative standpoint at this particular point. So, it feels great, and I'm excited to know that this is going to be home for a lot longer.
The NWCA and the Division I Leadership Council recommended that competition begin January 1. That was a couple weeks ago they made that announcement. And with no schedule announced yet from Hokie Nation, I'm looking back at last year's schedule, and when we would record this show right before Thanksgiving, we'd be coming off the Navy Classic. You probably had a duel with a Big Ten team or two, maybe a dual meet on the baseball field. You've had an open, an inter-squad, something like that. A lot of scheduling, a lot of front loading of the schedule before heading into that Thanksgiving Day break. Now, what's the schedule allegedly going to look like as of right now? Because we're kind of looking at that January 1 start date, which seems to be recommended, conferences of different testing protocols and such. So what's it look like for the ACC, and the scheduling looking like for Virginia Tech Hokie Wrestling this year?
As of right now, and what the plan is, and as we know, plans can change at the drop of a hat in this climate, but right now, we plan on starting that first weekend in January. Our first competition would be January 2nd at home with a tri-meet with 2 out-of-conference teams. The following weekend, we plan on hitting the road to wrestle in a quad meet with some out-of-conference teams, and then we'll get into 5 weeks of consecutive conference matches with 1 a week. I think we plan on wrestling those on Friday. We're trying to implement something where we can bring additional athletes and wrestle additional athletes, in either the matches or in another event that we come up with, just trying to get creative to take advantage of this year when, there's nobody, everybody gets this year back, right? So nobody's redshirting, everybody can compete for Virginia Tech, where we typically would have guys redshirting, going to open tournaments. Obviously, open tournaments aren't going to happen. So, just trying to find a way to keep everybody involved, keep everybody excited about the opportunity to compete, and allowing those guys that maybe won't be in the starting lineup to get some competition, give them something to train for, and allowing them the opportunity to improve by competing and having coaches evaluate them. And that's really the best tool in terms of getting better, is competing, understanding, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and then improving in the areas that you need to improve. So that's kind of what we're hoping the schedule looks like. We're hoping that we can have something out to our fan base, hopefully really soon. I was hoping we would have it done already, but as you know, everything is kind of moves really slow right now. And but that's the gist of it. So for people that are curious about it, that are wanting to know, I know we've got I've talked to a lot of parents of kids on our team and fans, and that's certainly a question that we get often. That's kind of what it's going to look like. We'll have, after the completion of our dual meet season, we'll have a weekend off. We'll have the ACCs, which tentatively are scheduled a week earlier than they typically are, a couple weeks, and then hopefully the NCAA Championships. And that's kind of what our schedule is going to look like.
And the understanding is if there is a quarantine situation from a championship, that doesn't eliminate that athlete or those affected athletes who are through the contract tracing or whatever the heck the process is in the ACC from having to miss a championship should it be held.
Right. So basically, essentially, we moved our ACC championships up a week. So there's more than just that 1 weekend off between the ACCs and the NCAAs. So we'll have 2 weekends in between. So if for some reason you do get contact traced from the ACC tournament, it allows you enough time to get back for the NCAA championships. So that's the thought process there.
Gotcha. And it's also logical since, again, the term fluid has been thrown out ever since the start of this thing back in March when we canceled sports. So, the situation's fluid. And of course, like you said, that thing can change at the drop of a hat. But as it impacts this year's scheduling, I know that a couple teams that are in the region, not necessarily in the conference, but in the region, are looking at doing some different things with, not necessarily a double duel format in some cases, but putting 2 teams on the mat, for example, and believe it or not, under NCAA rules, if you've got a second team wrestling a varsity competition, that's a varsity duel. So your win-loss team record may be impacted, but the opportunity to maybe have say an orange and maroon team, hypothetically, not saying this is what you're going to do, but that possibility does seem to be floating through some coaches' desks right now.
Yeah, I think so, and I think we're gonna find a creative way so it's not an additional dual meet. We're gonna try to find a way to have some sort of round robin, or maybe called an invitational between the two teams that wrestle on Friday, and maybe have something Saturday morning or after the dual meet on Friday night. So it's maybe a slightly different format, but again, the whole idea is just to get not only our backup wrestlers matches, but then also get additional matches for your starters, maybe against the opposing team's second or third team guy. So at the end of the day, what we're really trying to do is make sure that our guys are prepared for the end of the year, that they have competition, that everybody stays engaged and has an opportunity to compete this year and has something to look forward to, and I think it's difficult to keep kids engaged when there's nothing in front of them in terms of competition, right? So this allows us to provide those guys with those opportunities. And I think that will help their excitement level and really just help the overall atmosphere of all the programs in the ACC.
Do we know what the fan situation is going to be like for Virginia Tech athletics as it relates to wrestling and the possibility of going back to Moss this year? I've got to think is probably off the table, but am I off base here? What are we looking at as far as spectators in Castle or possibly in Moss?
That's something that we're still working on. It has not been determined. I've heard multiple possibilities, so really don't want to speculate on that, not knowing for sure exactly what it's going to look like.
We look at the success you've had that's led to the trophies, that's led to the national championships and the All-American finishes multiple times by many athletes. It's arguable to say that wrestling's the most successful sport currently at Virginia Tech. How many of your colleagues in other sports do you cross paths with? They reach out to you for advice or something that they can implement within their sports program?
I've got some pretty good relationships with, some of the coaches. A lot of them probably closer with the coaches that have been here for a long time at Virginia Tech. Mike Brizendine, our head soccer coach. Got to know the new softball coach very, very well and chat with him a lot. John Sheff, the baseball coach, is a pretty good buddy of mine too. So, I talk to those guys fairly often. Not as much as probably I have in the past here recently, just because we don't see them nearly as much, given the work situation. And there's some coaches are in the office more than others, so we're not really crossing paths quite as much. But yeah, we definitely bounce off ideas, talk a little bit about certain things institutionally that affect all of our programs, and try to game plan on the best approach to help everybody in some of those areas. So yeah, I think that's one of the cool things about working at Virginia Tech is it's a pretty tight community in terms of the athletic department and the relationships that you develop not only with your own staff but other staff within the department. So yeah, it's been good, and I think as a head coach, you probably have more relationships with other head coaches. When I was an assistant coach, probably had more relationships with assistant coaches.
So when it comes to all of this fun stuff we're dealing with, one of the impacts has been recruiting, and it seems to be that this dead period thing has impacted things. And that out of the question, take the opinions of the dead period being extended out of the situation. When you're looking at the next recruiting class, what are some areas that you're looking to identify with the class of 2021 that's coming out right now?
Just continuing to try to get elite kids that have an elite mindset and an elite approach to the sport of wrestling. And again, it's, we're not going to have a huge class this year, and there's a lot of things to consider with this additional year that kids are going to be awarded if they choose to take it. The whole financial situation with scholarship becomes a little bit more complicated as well. But there's some weight classes that we certainly have identified or weight class areas that we feel like, we need to definitely address. And I think we're going to do that. And I think we're going to do it with some really good kids. I feel great about some of the prospects that we're in on, and I think that like Virginia Tech a lot, and we're really high on their list. But it's a difficult situation right now, just because you're not allowed any in-person contact with these kids. So we can't home visit them. They can come to campus, but it's something that they have to, set up on their own and do on their own and take visits on their own. So we've had a couple kids that have done that, but and I think we'll see more kids that will do that now since the dead period was recently extended through April. But I think, and I've said this to other people, one of our strongest, I think, qualities in recruiting is getting kids on campus and allowing them to be here for football games and that environment, and just kind of being able to feel and experience Virginia Tech. And it's really, I think, propelled our recruiting in previous years, and we just don't have that right now. So it definitely makes it a challenge for us. But, again, I think it'll probably be a class much like it was with this class signed in November, where numbers may not be really high, but I think quality will be really good.
Shifting gears from the Hokie wrestling to the Southeast Regional Training Center side of things, big news that came out of the pipe within the last week. Nahshon Garrett, national champion from Cornell, 4-time All-American, has joined the Southeast RTC, currently residing down in Tennessee, about a 2-hour drive up to Blacksburg. Well, what was it like to get the opportunity to bring Nahshon into the program?
I mean, it's fantastic, especially for our little guys. Nahshon's wrestling speaks for itself. I mean, 4-time All-American, NCAA champion. He's an unbelievably talented guy. So, having the opportunity to partner with him and get him involved with our program, and he still wants to compete some, and I don't think he's ready to hang that up just yet. So that's been, it really worked out well. Nahshon's in Kingsport, Tennessee. He's got a wrestling club down there that he works, a few nights a week, and then he travels up here and trains with us on the other days of the week. So it's not exactly the same situation as James, where James is with us, every single day. And, this is, his kind of home base, and he's living here and his family's here, and he's in our room every day. Nahshon's going to be, probably in town training with us, 8 to 10 times a month, which is great. And we're excited about, but he's got an obligation that he's committed to down in Tennessee. And, down the road, we'll see where things go, but he's certainly a great asset to the Southeast Regional Training Center, just from the kind of athlete he is, and how we think he can perform and help us in that area, but also as a training partner for our guys.
So was it a strategic goal to get a lightweight, because you've got Green as a middleweight and Ty Walls as an upperweight?
I wouldn't say it was a strategic move. I mean, we've got Cody Brewer, who's pretty dang good lightweight and can still go. So, we felt really good about, Cody and him coaching our little guys, but we feel great about, we've got some really good lightweights right now, and, signing Cooper Flynn in November, who's a highly ranked kid, who's somebody we're very excited about. And then, some of it was circumstantial. Nahshon was in Tennessee, and I had bumped into him. I was at a tournament with my son, who's an 8th grader, and he was there coaching his kids, and talked to him a little bit and kind of, planted the seed. And him and James are pretty good friends, and it just kind of snowballed from there. But yeah, I mean, we're fortunate. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than to be good, and maybe there's a little luck involved just from geography and where he's at. But he's been up here a couple times, and he can still roll. I know that.
Yeah, still hungry, as his opportunity at the World Championships was taken away by injury. So I think he's still got a little bit of that itch as we go into, I guess, we be the new Olympic year in 2021. Keeping it on the freestyle side of things, U23s and the UWW Junior Championships, usually held in April, depending on whether it's Vegas or wherever else they want to put it. That was moved to Omaha earlier this month. I could say a load of Hokies out there wrestling for the Southeast RTC, but a good group of young guys, good group of seasoned guys. And overall, before we get to the individual performances, what was your overall takeaway from the performances of those Hokie Nation wrestlers?
I thought it was good. I think we had 12 guys out there, and I want to say 10 placed. Joey Prada got hurt and had the injury default, but we had a lot of guys place, and we had 3 guys in the junior division that were in the finals. It wasn't perfect. It never is, but I think when you look at it as a whole, you got to feel pretty good about how they performed and the amount of young, talented guys we have in the program right now. I was pleased, up and down the board. I thought guys, even some guys that maybe didn't get to the finals or place as high as they wanted to, I thought they competed really hard. I thought their effort was really good. And guys like Andy Smith and Cody Howard and Stan Smeltzer and, Colin Girardi, was real pleased with the efforts we got from those guys. And, we've been training hard and we haven't been able to compete for a long time. So, that you never really know. And, competition helps you evaluate what you've been doing. And I think we feel pretty good about what we've been doing and how we've been approaching things and just, the improvement we've seen from some of these guys. So it was a great opportunity to compete. And I know our guys, it allowed them something to train for as well and something to get excited about. And, just fun to be back on the road with the guys and traveling. And that part of it is always a good time as well. So was pretty pleased overall.
Now, don't want to bring up everybody's mental health in this, but college athletes and wrestlers, they're wired differently. We've got to find competition. We got to do something we spend all this time perfecting our craft for 7 minutes to put it out there. And now freestyle is just 6 minutes. And, what was the state of, I guess, was it a bit of a return to normalcy in some ways? Like, okay, it's November. This is when we're supposed to be competing. The style may be different, but, how was the preparation? How was the general attitude? Take the wrestling out of it, but the general attitude of the guys that got a chance to compete.
Great. I think they were grateful to have the opportunity to wrestle. I think we've done a pretty good job of trying to stay neutral through this whole thing and just focus on our day-to-day and improving every day. And, just that part of it. But yeah, I definitely think that especially some guys more than others need to know that there's something out there in front of them, that they get an opportunity to compete and test themselves and be competitive and, not wrestle with your teammate or, your roommate or whoever it might be and wrestle some guys from other programs. So, they were definitely fired up to get out there and scrap. And, it was a good event. USA Wrestling ran a great event. The competition was fantastic. There was guys from all over the place. So, overall it was a great experience.
Now, when you're coming from the outside and you look at wrestling, you think obviously it's a high contact sport because it's the ultimate contact sport in college. It's one-on-one. You're wrestling one another. But when we come to dual meets and individual competitions, well, you're only competing with one person at a time in most places, a 42 by 42 foot square. It's unlike football where you've got 22 guys banging in a confined space, every 30 to 45 seconds. So for the outsider looking at how a wrestling tournament can be conducted in a way that's within the standards that we're looking at across the country, whether with social distancing and masking up and such, what were some things that you saw USA Wrestling do in Omaha that are like, yeah, this is something that we need to tell people about, that we are ready as a sport to combat this? Because when it comes to, let's be honest, when it comes to communicable skin diseases or something, we've got all sorts of protocols. So being able to deal with a communicable disease is not something we are, unfamiliar with in the sport of wrestling. Yeah,
and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. The one thing that is a little bit more unique to our sport, obviously the contact is, it's, there's as much as in any other sport, if not more. But you can limit it to one person on one person. And even at a tournament, if you wrestle 5 or 6 times, you're only exposed to 5 or 6 people. So that is unique for sure to the sport of wrestling. But USA Wrestling just did a really good job. The facility was in a convention center type of building. So it was, they were able to spread things out. They kept the fans away from the mats. They were very, very strict on, who they let on the floor. So it wasn't your typical, kind of open wrestling tournament where there's just tons of people piled on top of each other. So even in the warm-up area, it was, there was just a huge space available to these guys, and it would allow teams to spread out and stay away from each other while we weren't wrestling. And then on the floor of the venue, did a fantastic job of managing the flow onto the floor, only letting you go out on the mat with one coach. When they were on deck, you entered one way, you had to walk around, exit the other way. So I think they probably did about as much as you can possibly do in terms of safety to run a great event. And, they're getting pretty good at it, I guess. They ran the senior nationals out in Iowa, which I did not attend, but it sounds like, that was also a well-run event. So kudos to, the USA Wrestling staff for putting that together.
Yeah, I was in Iowa, and one thing that was really interesting, and I saw this when I was watching the stream from Omaha, is the quotient of wrestling dads with coaching armbands is pretty much gone. So it's not like you got the guy sipping coffee with a coach's pass. It's like, all right, cool, we can actually watch our kids and not have to stand behind this wall of people. But that's just me.
Yeah, definitely. It's always good to get the crazy dads off the floor, right?
Sir, I believe I am coaching your kid. So yeah. Anyway, enough of that. I jest. I kid. Now, as we move to the individual side of things, you had guys out there wrestling for the first time. While they're not wearing the VT on the singlet, they're still representing the Southeast RTC and Blacksburg and the school. Not directly, but, pretty much directly, as we know. First opportunity to really represent the school for some of these kids. And what was it like to really kind of see these guys in essentially college age competition for the first time?
It was good. I told this to somebody. There wasn't a lot of surprises, to be quite honest with you. We've had the opportunity to watch all these guys, young, old, and older in practice, if not for the last several months. For the last year or two or three or whatever it might be. So a lot of times you get what you see in practice, and some of the things, whether they're good or whether they're bad, that we see in practice carries over into competition. And to me, and the message is, when there's something to correct, we got to correct it in practice. So there wasn't a lot of surprises, a lot of what I saw, and I think what maybe our fans saw is stuff that we've been seeing in the room, and, and there's a lot of good stuff for sure. Really, really good stuff, and guys that can, have some great wrestling skill, and guys that I think have a chance to be, really, really good, and multiple time All-Americans, national champions, and who knows beyond that. So, but yes, it was good to be able to see how they compete too, because it's, sometimes it's a little bit different, but I think from a mental standpoint, how they prepared, how they got their weight down, their discipline, all of those things. And that's part of the reason we wanted to take a bunch of guys to this thing, is for them to be able to feel that, because we're going to have limited opportunities this year with the collegiate season. And the margin for error is less with limited opportunities, and, the potential of not having as many competitors at the NCAA Championships. You really have to make sure when we hit the ground or hit the mat in January that we get a lot of those things ironed out that are under our control: weight, routine, just our mental preparation, our warm up, all of those things that you have to kind of experience to understand and to get better at and to master. So that was good in that sense.
I'm going to dial in a little bit on a couple of the weight classes with especially the juniors, because that's where you had the most success with the three runners up, third place finish and seventh place finish. Now U23, you had placers with Smeltzer, Howard, and Girardi all placing. But I want to go to Bryce Andonian first, who one of the wildest matches of the tournament, a 15-15 with Alvarez there. What were you in the corner for that one?
I was not, and we had so many guys wrestling. It was hard as a coach. Me and Coach Brewer were out there, but so you missed a lot of the matches. But I was able to go back and watch some other ones as well. So, but it was wild for sure. Yeah, and that's one thing you can always say about Bryce Andonian. He's fun to watch. That's for sure.
And that's also one thing that those who are maybe freestyle novices to know that how fast paced freestyle wrestling is. And it really kind of, it's a real quick give and take. You can be up 9-0, and in on a single, nearly getting the technical fall. And next thing you know, you're in parterre getting rolled up and boom, 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 boom. And I'm looking at this tale of two matches, it's like 15-15. Okay, there's no overtime, but without overtime, they wrestle this thing completely different, being the criteria as it is. But you see a 15-15 match. I don't care what the style of wrestling it is. You're gonna turn some heads.
Yeah, and those guys are both exciting to watch, and both can score a lot of points, right? So Bryce, he always goes out there and he throws it out there, and sometimes it works out well. Most of the time, it works out well, and sometimes he gets himself in trouble, like he did in the finals. But yeah, if you hadn't had the chance to watch the Andoni and Alvarez match, I encourage you to get on Flow Wrestling and check it out. It was exciting.
Now moving over at 70 kilos, both wrestlers lost to Keegan O'Toole, but Clayton Hillary taking second at 70, again, non-Olympic weight. But what do you get when you see a guy like Clayton Hillary on the mat?
Well, Clayton he's just the guy's, his pace is awesome. He's going to attack the whole time. You're going to get a great effort every time Clayton steps out there. And, he's still got some positions that he needs to get better in, but, I love the way he prepares every day in practice, and, he's tough and he's going to bring heat, and Keegan O'Toole is really good. That guy's going to do some great things in his college career. He was impressive. And, I actually thought Connor Brady wrestled him great, or I wouldn't say great, but he wrestled him well. And, was kind of got out freestyled a little bit, but got behind him once, would have been a takedown and folk style, got to his leg another time, got crotch lifted a couple times. Connor really wrestled pretty good. And if you watch his matches, from a folk style standpoint, I think he would have had some different outcomes. So both of those guys, I thought competed pretty good, especially for Clayton, who's a young guy, first, college level event. Connor, somebody who had an injury last year, who hasn't competed in basically a year, held up well. And we saw some good things from both of those guys. So I was pleased from that. And obviously, O'Toole's, he's pretty dang good.
Hunter Kaka made the finals, falling to Heinzelman from Oklahoma in the finals. And, it's nice to have a big guy that can move well. I mean, a little bit of Ty Walls there, a little athletic heavyweights. John Borst moves well. You've had athletic big guys there, and there seems to be a pretty high ceiling and a pretty bright future for Kaka.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, he needs to make some adjustments just to, I think, the physicality maybe and the intensity level of college wrestling. I probably caught him off guard a little bit, but from a skill standpoint and a desire standpoint, I think Hunter Katka's, got a chance to be phenomenal. Wrestling matters to him a lot, and losing that match hurt him a lot. So, that's, as a coach, that's some of the stuff that you like to see is, when things don't go well, how are you going to react and how are you going to respond, and what changes are you going to make, and Hunter didn't have maybe as much consistent training leading up to that event for a few reasons. So, that maybe, that probably didn't help him. It definitely didn't help him in that situation in the finals. But was really pleased with what we saw from him overall. Just like any young guy, there's some adjustments that he needs to make. And, but he's incredibly coachable. And like I said, I mean, he's the kind of guy that's in there the next day trying to fix the things that didn't go well, right, in the areas that he needs to improve. And I've already seen that from him since then. So it was really encouraging.
And lastly, I want to talk about Sam Hilligus, who comes in with third place finish at 61 kilos, took a loss in the quarters, comes all the way back, hits that third place finish. And, you talked about getting to see guys out there and maybe being out freestyled in some respect. But what did you see from Sam Hilligus that he can correct and that he did well here at the UWW Junior Nationals?
Well, he's got a heck of a chest lock, I can tell you that much. He's got, his hips are really, really good. He can wrestle. Does a lot of the same stuff that Coach Freyer does from that chest lock position when you get to his legs. He's just, he's really difficult to finish on. He can score a lot of points. He needs to be able to make the adjustment from from freestyle to folk style in those positions, because oftentimes when you're on your butt there, you're giving up 2 in folk style, and where in freestyle you're not. And then you can chest wrap the guy, chest lock him over and get the exposure points. But I've seen him do similar things in folk style, and he's also, really good in those positions in folk style wrestling too. So it was good. Yeah. I mean, he's, the one thing I think that he needs to believe a little more in is his own attacks. And, when he did go out and shoot and get to the guy's legs, he scored some takedowns off, some nice stuff. So for Sam, he's really got to just, be committed to his own attacks and not always looking to score defensively, and just wrestle in the positions where he's really good. So, but again, for a guy his age to go out there and perform the way he did was impressive.
Before we wrap up, I want to thank Brian Deeg and Jason Cole for their questions, maybe not directly, but inspired questions here on episode 100 of Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling. And as we wrap up, Coach Robie, Turkey Day's coming up. For years, I would always use the Hokie bird for my "What am I thankful for" wrestling kind of piece that I used to write on Intermat, and I did a podcast years ago, and I'd always use that Hokie bird for my wrestling Thanksgiving. So let's turn it a little wrestling Thanksgiving for you. What are you thankful for when it comes to not just Virginia Tech wrestling, the sport of wrestling, but Virginia Tech, Blacksburg, and Southwest Virginia in general?
Well, I think, right now during this pandemic is you got to find positives. And one of the things that I'm thankful for, and we talk about it a lot, and just, having gratitude for, what's going on and the people in your life is it's been great for me to be able to spend time with my family. I've got 2 sons that wrestle, and I've been able to travel to events with them and just watch them wrestle and be a dad. And I'm certainly thankful for that, and thankful for the time that I've been able to spend with my family that I typically don't get to do. Right. And, so that's been awesome. I'm thankful for the staff that I have at Virginia Tech, Coach Freyer, Coach Hott, Coach Brewer, Coach Walls, James, now with Nahshon on board, and just everybody that we have in the program, not only accomplished wrestlers and great coaches, but also great people, and, makes my life and my job a lot easier. So, those are 2 of the things off the top of my head. Obviously love being a Hokie, love knowing that I have the opportunity to be here for the foreseeable future and continue to build this thing, and just grateful to hopefully be back on the mat in early January.
And I tell you what, from where I sit to where you sit, I am thankful for Hokie Nation. I'm thankful for Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling. I'm thankful for Virginia Tech Wrestling as a whole. You guys were right there with me when I started my business, coming on 7 years ago. And you guys are still there, and I'm back to being a Hokie football fan again, as painful as that may be this season for some of us. Situations be what they are. I'm back to watching the Hokies on Saturdays. So I'm thankful that everything Virginia Tech's brought to me, and I'm thankful for Hokie Nation for continually listening to the show.
Well, we appreciate you, Jason. It was great to catch up again, man. Look forward to more conversations and more news to talk about in the upcoming months.
Hokie fans, listen to Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling anywhere you go by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, but also on your favorite podcatcher of choice through Stitcher, Spotify, Spreaker, and more. Everything you need to know and how to listen at InsideVirginiaTechWrestling.com.
This show is part of the Mat Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MatTalkOnline.com.